That's fancy, isn't it? That camera just like zoomed in on me and everything. We've never had this level of joy before with our IT. Welcome to another exciting cabinet meeting. It's a pleasure as ever. A very short agenda today, so I don't intend to keep you for too long. Just the one item on the agenda. Morning over there. So we will fly through. I'll just point out for if you're looking around the room, going, who are all these people? Lucy at the back of the room there, do some work experience with me today, so don't feel oppressed by her presence. I'm sure it will all be fine. Right, so we'll fly through this morning's agenda. So minutes of the last meeting held on 13th of October 2022. Any thoughts, comments, objections to those? We are very happy. Good. Apologies for absence. Any this morning? Business manager? No? Full attendance, what we like to see. Declarations of interest? Any of those? That's 3/4 of the agenda done. What fine progress we are making. Budget update reports. Rather than preamble my way through it, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Jackson to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. The report that we've got before us today highlights the Council's current and medium-term financial position, as well as proposing the approach to undertake to the budget consultation. I know that you will all have read the report, and I'm going to go through it line by line or section by section, but there are a few key areas that I want to just highlight. Obviously, last May we set out our strategic vision in the 10-year Nottinghamshire Plan for a healthy, prosperous and greener future for everybody. Colleagues will recall when we set out our budget proposals last February, there is a process to be undertaken to align the budget with our delivery plans as we progress through this administration. We all know the additional financial challenges that the country, the world is facing. And we're not immune to any of that. We've got pressures with staff recruitment and retention, especially with social workers. There's significant increases in costs of using agency workers to deliver services. There are staff shortages within the home care market nationally. There's general inflation that I don't need to tell anybody about, including wage inflation. And there's pressure on government finances, and there's an announcement being made, I think right now, Leader, you'd know more about than the rest of us. And so there are a lot of assumptions within the MTFS still, which may crystallise once we've got more information from government. You'll also be aware that the local government pay award was higher than originally budgeted for, but it can be managed within existing budget contingencies. So during the summer, we've asked Cabinet members to review their budgets together with the pressure and inflation bids as currently set out in the MTFS. We recognise that financial stability, sustainability rather, comes from managing our pressures and transforming services. Today's report sets out those cross-cutting transformation programmes. The investment in these programmes is now showing significant reductions are anticipated in our future pressures, and these benefits are reflected within the MTFS this morning. At the same time, I want to be honest with people, and so I've asked that the current assumptions regarding council tax and adult social care precept increases are taken out of the MTFS. This shows the true picture of the underlying finances of the council and clearly shows to our residents that such increases in local tax is not a given. Rather, it's something we should consider when proposing the budget to full council in February. Consequences of this review work are shown in Table 2 on page 12. Revised year-on-year funding shortfall that we face next year is now predicted at 34.8 million, rising to 73.8 over the 3 years of the MTFS. Funding gap is considerable, and Leader and I have been lobbying government for more funding alongside the whole local authority sector. If no funding comes, then we would need to consider where savings will be necessary. Part of the Rising to the Challenge work, the report identifies the intended consultation, which will go live later today. I know earlier drafts of the consultation document and questionnaire were provided to members of the Overview Committee last month. They were also provided the opportunity to comment on the questions as well in advance of today's launch of the consultation. Consultation seeks views on service areas most valued by residents, and if savings are required, where savings could be considered. Also questions on local taxation. I don't want colleagues to think that budget is then neatly boxed off. There are still a number of moving parts as Cabinet shapes the draft budget in January. And remember, we have yet to know the outcome from today's autumn statement. the provisional local government settlement, which is unlikely to be known until much nearer to Christmas yet again, and this will set the referendum limits for local taxation. Council tax base and the status of the collection funds from district and borough councils will not be provided until mid-January. So, in line with the council's new budget framework, Overview Committee will be provided an opportunity at their meeting in December to form their response to the consultation. This, together with the outcome from the residents' consultation, will all be considered in determining the council's budget before next February. And as we progress through the coming months, we will consider all the assumptions in the budget as unknowns become knowns. We'll consider what reserves we can deploy to buy time to enable greater transformation of services. We'll consider what potential savings options we need to consider, some of which may lead to further consultation and further consideration. We'll consider local taxation in line with new referendum limits, and the balance between protecting frontline services and how tax rises affect communities. The report leader sets out the key milestones for setting next year's budget, and I'll formally move the recommendations which are on page 17 of the pack.
Thank you, Richard. Really helpful summary. Did you want to bring Nigel in at all, or are you happy you've boxed it all off? No, good. Right, from my own perspective, I'll open it out to the floor. I think I'm grateful for all the work that's gone into setting out this position statement, in effect, as to where we are. I think it's important to recognise the hard work that's gone into managing this year's budget, particularly when Richard talked about the inflationary pressures reaching some 11% as they are now. Still, this budget, as it stands in year, brings us in within, I think, 0.5% of our predictions from last year, which is a pretty impressive figure, really, in the grand scheme of a £500 million revenue budget. So grateful for all the hard work from officers and colleagues to make that happen. It's a tough national and international position, but feel relatively, therefore, well off in the sense that we can look through these figures, look at the figures being increasingly made available by other councils and similar councils across the country, and feel that we are, as I say, in a relatively strong place from that perspective. From my point of view, in terms of making a case about setting a balanced budget and trying to do that in a right and helpful and sustainable way into the new year, I've been making the case in recent weeks, and we'll see how much it's listened to in perhaps more in the local government settlement in December than today in the autumn statement, but making the case for that long-term sustainability and for all the hard work we've been doing around transformation, getting things out into communities. The fact that I think part of the reason we are in that relatively good position is that we do have more community-based prevention and intervention services that help us to manage demand in perhaps a way that other authorities no longer have, and I'd like to see that continue. That's the case with making government, and particularly around flexibility. It's difficult times internationally. We're going to find a pretty difficult autumn statement this afternoon, I would imagine, and rumours suggest. And therefore, the points I've been making to government in that regard have been about flexibility with existing funding more so than anything. I think, hopefully, clear from our budget conversations, I think if we had ultimate freedom with our entire budget as it stands to spend it as we wish, we wouldn't have a budget gap. We'd be able to use it for our priorities and deliver that locally. That's an important message I've been trying to get across to them when we talk about local leadership, empowering local councils to make decisions for communities. There are a variety of ways government could help us in the coming weeks to do that. But as I say, grateful for the work that's gone into managing the budget so far this year, and we'll be in a position come the new year to make some firm decisions once we know what that national picture looks like. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this? Councillor Lawton, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you very much. Specifically, I'm just highlight items 16, 17 and 18 in the paper where it's where it's talking about transformation and the importance of transformation on the budget. I was around as some colleagues here when our revenue budget was nearer 700 million, sorry, not half a billion. So and so there's been a considerable shrinkage in the budgetary situation across a number of departments across the council, and that has been created by some army slicing services that we deliver right the way across the authority. There are arguments whether that's right or wrong, and I'm sure some people will say, no, we need more money from central government, but when there isn't any more money, then you have to cut your cloth. accordingly. And so this is why I just wanted to mention about transformation. Transformation is about it is about managing demand, and we've just got to manage demand to be able to deal with the budget at this present point in time. We've reached the end of the salami slicing, and we've got to actually work out where and how to reduce the overall spend. And much of that is down to early intervention, and we must concentrate on that to be able to improve the long-term sustainability of the budget as we move forward as a council. So I look forward to
Now mine's gone. Aha, Joy. I praised the tech at the start of the meeting. I take it back. Councillor Clark.
I can speak if you
Mine's
like.
all right, Neil.
Is there anybody there?
There is. Use mine. Oh, hello. Right. Yeah, thank you, Leader. We have, in the past, we often, every year we seem to say there's challenging times, but I think this year we can definitely say, this is serious, this is for real, and we've got really challenging times. And Councillor Jackson has alluded to the various factors of lobbying government, etc. I really just wanted to assure Cabinet colleagues that I am lobbying government along with your good self, Leader, for all the high profile services that we are providing. We need to ensure that we are still delivering the government's agenda and indeed protecting our services, and so we are doing all we can to ensure that we can protect our services as best we can, and keep shaping them and keep going forward, because it's definitely our intention to make sure that we use every penny and get as much value out of it as we possibly can.
Thank you very much. Keith, while you're on the same microphone.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It's the person that's responsible for the IT equipment effectively. It's good that mine works, isn't it?
Sort yourself out. Don't worry about the rest of us.
Yeah, I think the situation we're in financially as a council, we shouldn't underestimate that, and I don't think we are underestimating that. I think testament to how we run the budget is that a part of the situation we're in now. The fact that with all these pressures that we're under, same as every household in this county are under pressures. Yeah, whether we've only gone 0.5% over our spend. And I think that's testament to the hard work that people are doing and putting in to make sure we're doing that, but still maintaining the services. And it's easy to be a council when everything's wonderful and going well. But actually, when it's not, it's about how you respond and how you react and what you do and the decisions you make. And I think we're in a stronger place than we could possibly be to make the right decisions, even though some of them are going to be really tough. And I think the transformation element to it is a real big factor of that. I do worry that there's a lot of councils not doing this, and I worry that they'll get rewarded by being bailed out, and we'll be looked at, or they'll be all right. And actually, I think we should be looking or making sure or insisting that actually we should be funded to do that transformation so that our services can be maintained during that period, because this is all about long-term savings, maintaining services more efficiently. And I think that's absolutely the right way to go, but I hope we're not penalised for that effort, because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good point. I made the case to successive ministers, including the local government minister when he came just last week, that government needs to support and incentivise those councils that are doing the right thing to make things sustainable, and that hopefully, as I say, will sink in. The Chief Executive's made a note that Councillor Lawson owes £10 to the Chairman's charity, so we'll make sure that debt.
Yeah, just picking up on a point that you made, Leader, and Councillor Gurley. In terms of the position that we find ourselves in, we have enormous pressures to come. We've had enormous pressures during this year, and yet we are almost to budget. We are, a very small shortfall. It's very easy for us as elected members to say, haven't we done a good job? Well, the reality of it is we have overseen a good job being done. That good job has been done by officers, and I'd just like to pay tribute to our senior officers in particular, who are the budget managers, but obviously officers all the way down the food chain that are delivering services in very difficult times. We're having to look at budgets in ways that we've never really had to look at them before, and I think the collaborative and inclusive approach from senior officers, and I particularly look at the corporate directors who are sat in the room today, I commend them for the way in which they've tackled this problem collectively, constructively as we move forward. And of course I include the Chief Executive in that.
Thank you. That's absolutely right, and I'd echo all of that. I think the way, particularly in recent months, we've been able to approach that collectively as both a cabinet and a group of senior officers together has been really positive and a really good step in the right direction, I think. So long may that continue. Tracy.
Thank you. Well, I come in at this point as Little Miss Echo, really, because Chris has just stolen my lines. From the point of view of my portfolio area, so children and family services, the report makes really clear what the pressures are on us, and that's demand and recruitment and retention of workforce and the costs, not least the challenges that come from an external private market which is hiking up costs through agency and how we meet the demand and supply needs. So I had been planning to thank my officers along with their colleagues in other departments for the work that has gone into the whole family safeguarding programme and the approach to transformation. We've spoken often about how we should be trying to support families and young people at an earlier stage so that they don't necessarily come into our care, which is where the costs are highest. So I'm grateful to officers, not only within my department but across other departments, because this collegiate approach is obviously what we have been focusing on. I think the programme is already delivering savings. We are very focused on the way that we want to approach helping people earlier in their journey and in their contact with us. So thank you in that way. We will do our very best, Leader, to keep a lid on our budget despite the strains. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All for a bit of repetition. Somebody once told me that politics is the art of repeating things that other people have said and making it sound like your idea. Keep practicing. Is there anybody else in Cabinet who wants to speak? Otherwise, I'll go to opposition questions. No. So, Councillor Pringle, you'd asked to speak on this agenda item.
Thank you, Chairman. Correct. I appreciate that. I'm to speak today. I'm members, and I'll try. I have changed some things so it's more direct and not waffling as normally would happen. But I would like to thank Nigel and his team, and again all the officers in following your comment and recognising the difficulties that we have out there financially. But I do have a few issues with the contents of the report. In particular, starting with paragraph 3 on page 7. Hello there. Okay, back on it. Inflation's over 11%, but inflation's been down below 3% for 6 of the past 7 years, and it's been the main pressure. To say it's been the main pressure this year's correct, but inflation hasn't been the main issue to the council finances. That's actually been austerity and the service cost. The austerity has done way more damage than the pretension of inflation over the last 12 years. And the unfortunate fact is that we do have shrinking budgets that we recognise, and we recognise that we've had 60% cuts. That's huge. Paragraph 8 of the report recognises it's unlikely that council will receive additional funding support, whilst earlier in the report it's recognised that there is an increased demand on services as well. So that poses lots of different issues for us. And in real terms, obviously means that the service we provide will probably be less than what they are presently, assuming that funding is the driver for all service provision. The report also mentions wage growth as a pressure. I'd like to make the point that council workers have had no pay rises or below inflation pay rises for the majority of the last 12 years. And even the impressive 10% rise for the poorest workers are still, as we said earlier, inflation at 11%, are still a real terms pay cut. The report references facing the challenge. And on a positive note, we all completely agree with paragraph 16. The Labour Group firmly believes in early intervention, as Councillor Taylor has mentioned many times. And obviously, we were part of the creation of the Short Start Centre, so we recognise that as being paramount. But we were taken by a wrecking ball from the start of 2010 with Cameron and Osborne, and I hope we recognise that the long-term stability of services is based on sustainable funding, and that again, I think Keith just mentioned, the long-term side that we're looking at needs to be budgeted in a positive way, not to just give false hope for a short period of time. The council also. I hope the council are going to take the Equalities Impact Assessment seriously. I'm not sure as I've got full faith that the high level exercise or that will fulfil our obligations. I hope the council detail the assessment on individual services and make them responses public. I think that's going to be vital to things moving forward. And again, I congratulate you, Councillor Bradley Leader, and Cabinet for acknowledging the impact of the disastrous mini-budget statement on the 23rd of September. The fact that is on top of the inflation rises, the Prime Minister at that time, as a shorter serving Conservative Prime Minister, crashed our economy at a time peaking inflation and adding 19.3 billion within less than 30 days. We can't get away from that fact. None of us can. That's what we've ended up with. As per paragraph 14, the contents of protecting and enhancing key services really to look for support of this. Can I ask that will clarify specifically which key services will be on the list for protection, and to clarify what impacts will our residents see, even though you're sure, as is stated in the report, they won't bear the brunt of any increased costs. And I do make reference to the consultation. I think it's going to be vitally important for us to recognise the comments that's made. I hope that the consultation responses are representational of Nottinghamshire, not just a small clip. Thanks for letting me speak, Chair. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. A number of points there. I'll try and cover a few, and then I'll ask if Richard or Nigel want to comment on any of them. But I think in terms of your first point, we all recognise and we've talked about in the last few minutes the implications of reducing budgets, particularly 2010 to 2015. Nobody pretends that's not the case. I think the point in the report just seeks to clarify that hasn't been the case this year or in the last couple of years. It's largely led by, as I say, inflation and rising costs. You're absolutely right that nobody begrudges local government staff, council staff pay rises, but we do have to accept that there are implications on the budget for that as well. We have to work around that and fund that. In terms of sustainability, I think you're absolutely right, and the Nottinghamshire Plan lays out our priorities around supporting those transformation programs into preventive services and making sure we support that as much as possible, which speaks to your question about what are key services. Well, we have our statutory requirements, and we also have that prevention work that we want to do and protect as far as possible. Our ability to do that depends both on our own hard work and drive, but also on outcomes of government conversations and announcements in the next few weeks. So we wait with bated breath for those. On equality is absolutely right, and we will always, and reports always lay out potential impact on our residents from any of these decisions, and we'll take those into account. Obviously, as we set the budget, you guys as opposition members will have earlier than usual chance to have a look at and scrutinise those budget conversations through scrutiny over the next few months, and we have to wait and see, as I say, what those national implications are for us as we come to those conclusions. I don't know, Richard, if there's anything else you want to add on any of that.
I think you've covered an awful lot of it. What I would say to are we working? I think we're working again. What I'd say to Councillor Pringle, really, I mean, the point about transformation that's been made by other colleagues, you know, if I think what this organisation looked like back in 2009 when we inherited it, and again in 2017, it's almost unrecognisable to the organisation that there is today, which is streamlined and far more efficient. And yet, when you look at the services we're delivering, we're still delivering those services. In fact, they've been improved. And so, you know, it's a throwaway line sometimes to say we're doing more for less, but we really are. We're doing a lot more, actually, for a lot less. And so, you know, it always felt to me prior to 2009 a measure of success of the council was how much it had spent in a year and how many people it employed. And that has changed, and the success is now measured in how good the services are, and we want to continue to do that. I think the fact, as several colleagues pointed out, that we've done, and I thank officers in particular for this, that the council has done such a good job in year, despite inflation being twice what we expected, to be so close to the budget we set back in February. And I remind everyone that was on the day that Russia invaded Ukraine, and I don't think anybody predicted the turmoil in international economy that we've seen since then. The fact that we're so close to that, I think, shows that the concentration is always going to be from politicians and senior officers to maintain services wherever possible, but to do it as efficiently as we can. And that continues, and that's the theme when we're having our own internal discussions on the shape of the budget. We'll absolutely pay attention to the results of the public consultation, and I would urge all members and Councillor Pringle and everybody to encourage communities to take part in that consultation. The more response we get, the better we can reflect what communities really want to see, and we'll do our best to do that. It's going to be a balance, and it's going to be a balance of balancing the budget to start with, maintaining services, but also keeping council tax as far as possible down to an affordable level, because we're mindful of, obviously, the pressure on household budgets and right across Nottinghamshire. So look forward, really, to the next few months. And look forward to opposition alternatives when we come back on the 9th of February, as ever. And, you know, it's easy enough in opposition to say that we haven't had significant pay increases for staff over the last few years. We haven't had opposition budgets that proposed that either, because the reality was that was unaffordable in the context of trying to protect services. So no one's pretending this is going to be easy, but in terms of exactly what's on the agenda today, the most important part is the public consultation and getting that out there. It's ready to go live. It's a good document. It sets out exactly what Councillor Pringle has asked today, what the key services are. It asks members of the public to prioritise in their minds how those key services should be protected, and that's what we'll be cognizant of when it comes to setting our budget leader.
Thank you very much, Richard. Worth reiterating that challenge, request, whatever, I suppose, in terms of that scrutiny and opposition. You know, if there are things you would like us to do and ideas you want to bring forward, please do bring them forward early in the scrutiny process so that we can assess them and have a look at them, so that we can try and include those things if they work in our plans, and not at the meeting in February and ask us to decide in 10 minutes whether they are good or bad or indifferent. Hopefully we've got opportunities to have conversations in advance of that about the best way forward. Is there anyone else from Cabinet who wishes to speak to this? No? Right, in that case, all that is left to do is to put forward the recommendations on page 11 of the report. Can I ask for all those in favour? Unanimous, I think. Thank you very much, which allows us, as Councillor Jackson has said, to get that consultation out there and look forward to engaging with residents on that. I'd just finally encourage members from all parties, and hopefully opposition members will do the same within your own group conversations to encourage our residents to take part in that consultation and make sure that we get the best possible feedback from it. Thank you very much. You are free to leave. Run away while you can.